I want to invite to the stage our very special guest of today, Maxine Fassberg. So keynote from a great person and a woman, and well, she will talk about more about herself as well in the slides. So I'll give floor to you, Maxine.
Thank you, Anna. Good evening to all of you. It's a very great pleasure for me to be here today. I met Anna, obviously virtually, at a session we did together in the United Nations. And I was totally fascinated by the program she's running and offered to do anything she would ask to help. So I really hope that we can use the coming hour to discuss some issues that all of us face. It doesn't matter if you're a mentee or a mentor, if you're a man or a woman. And I can tell you that I worked for 37 years in Intel Corporation. I managed the operations in Israel, where we were the largest private employer in the country. And I think maybe I've been a mentor and a mentee for all of those years. And one thing I will tell you, all my mentors were men, because at that stage, there were no women in my kind of position. There were no women around. So for all of the guys online, yay, I'm so glad to see you mentoring. It's very, very important. So I didn't put, I put my important titles on this page. I'm Yossi's wife. I'm Guy and Liat's mother. And I am Eli and Netta and Dar and Be'eri and Shai's grandmother. And I can tell you that the jobs keep getting better. It's much better to be a grandmother than to be a mother. And so you all have something to look forward to. Okay, so today, we're going to talk about the differences. We're going to try and understand the gaps. We're going to try and look at some of the traps that we fall into and maybe come with a few solutions. But the rules for today are that at the end of every slide, I will pause and ask if there are questions. If you prefer, you can write to Anna on the chat, and at the end of the slide, she will read out the question to me. But this will not work if all I do is flip foils. So this should really be an interactive conversation. Now, this slide is specially for Anna, because when Anna and I spoke after our session in the United Nations, Anna was saying, I need to find ways to bring courage. And when I found this saying by Elizabeth Cady Stanton, and in a minute I'll tell you who she was, she said, the best protection any woman can have is courage. Now, she said that in 1848. Think about it. That is more than 60 years ago. She was already trying to lead the women's rights in the United States. I remind you that women only got the vote in America in the 1920, but the convention that she held in Seneca Falls in 1848 was the beginning of a document that they called the Declaration of Sentiments, and it was all about women's rights. So the topic is not new. and it's not going away. It's getting a little better, but it's still with us. Okay, next foil. Don't be afraid of this foil. It looks terrible, but I'll explain to you why I included it. This is part of what we call the differences. Now, I don't expect you to read what's written here. I will explain to you the thinking behind this foil. What I am trying to say is men and women do things differently. They think differently, they make decisions differently, they define honesty differently. They have very many different ways of doing the same thing. Now, what is important to understand is that if, for example, we take the decision making, men are analyzers. They look for the essential elements, simplicity, rules. Women are synthesizers, and they look for nuances. They look for context. They look for emotional comprehension. Now, what happens is when women behave like this, they are taken to be indecisive. It seems that their decisions take too long, and it seems to be very complex. Now, the whole message in this one is that because of the differences in the way women think and behave from men, we get many misunderstandings of intention. We lose the values. And as a result, women are very often undervalued. Now, it doesn't matter which of the elements that I've included in the list here. You can take the honesty one and see that because women are much more humble than men, and because women are what I call compulsive confessionals, and we'll talk about what that means some more later on, but it would appear that women make more mistakes. And that's the perception that arises from the behavior. Now, I'm not saying you need to change your behavior. No way. I am saying that everybody needs to learn to recognize the differences and respect the differences. Because it is from having, somebody said it, one of the mentors said it before, from having diversity, you get much better end result, and you get a much better solution to any problem if you take into account different perceptions and different points of view. So again, the bottom line here is to respect the differences, understand the differences, and then be able to understand how you leverage the differences and not try and make everybody the same. So now I'm going to stop on the end of this and ask if you have questions, or Anna, if you got any on chat.
I have a question, actually. So if we think about these differences, how can we best use some of the differences to kind of get better results, or actually to support promoting women further?
So you're already in the solution space, Anna. Can you hold that one for a little bit? I promise I'll come back to it. But for right now, what I would really like is if everybody can think about how you go about fostering the respect for the differences. Because until men can respect how women think, and women can understand why men talk the way they do, behave the way they do, we will be constantly digging in the why and not on how to move it forward. So if we can all go away from this one, from this foil with the understanding that the difference is good, then we're ready to move on.
And how could we promote this perceiving of differences as being good?
Solution space, Hannah? Hang on.
All right.
I still have a few more minutes. I promise I'll come back. Okay. No more. All right. So now, if you look.
We got actually one more question.
Yes, for sure.
So question is, do you think these perceptions are by men or also by women?
I think both. I think, remember, there is a saying that says, if you have a brain, you're biased. Now, perception and bias is more of the same. So there is no such thing as zero bias, okay? So therefore, women have the perception that men are aggressive. Women have the perception that men don't like to show their emotions. It may not be true for everybody, just like nothing is ever 100%. So I think, yes, women have perceptions about men and men have perceptions about women. And I think that, by the way, I see another question. Do women have the same perception about women like men have about women? Not necessarily, no. Because I think that when you, here's a very good comment. Upbringing and environment also affect how we accept the differences. That is 100% true. Our environment and our upbringing makes us most of what we are beside our genes, okay? So even if you take a given gene set and you put it in a different environment, you would get a different result. So society is giving us a lot of these perceptions, and society is dictating some of the biases that we carry around with us. And I think it's of paramount importance that we stop and we say, yes, I too am biased. And it doesn't matter if I'm saying it as a woman or as a man. Yes, I too am biased. I have a brain, so therefore I am biased. Okay, next. So if you think about, this is part of the differences, okay? How men and women are in terms of attitude to success. Men attribute their success to their skills. Women attribute their success to effort and luck, okay? I don't think you will often hear a man saying, wow, I landed that job because I was lucky. I landed the job because I have the skills, because I'm a professional, because I'm good. Attitude to failure, on that hand, men attributed to bad luck. Women attributed to inability. When you're applying for jobs, now this is so important. You look at a wanted advert, a job that's being posted, and a man will go through and say, I have, out of the 10 criteria, I have about 6 of them. I will apply. A woman will say, oh my God, I only have 8 of the criteria. I do not have 10. I cannot apply. Now, that is a behavioral response to an identical situation, which is governed by everything that we come, and whoever asks the question, whoever asked the question or made the comment in the beginning about your environment, it's very true that I need you to stop the chat for me if you can, and then ask me at the end because it's distracting me. That when you think about how women respond to what their environment has been teaching them, it makes them lose out on many of these opportunities. Now, if we go to the next one, and one of the mentors mentioned that women have dual careers. We manage the family, we manage our jobs. It's changing, and that is good. More and more men are participating in what goes on, but it's much less of a guilt trip for a man to push his career and know that there's somebody at home to watch the kids or raise the kids. And the women generally feel guilty about the impact that their job has on their family. And I can tell you a story that my daughter doesn't allow me to tell anymore. She's heard it so often. We went on relocation, my husband and I, first with one child, and then we went on a relocation with 2 children. And when the fourth time came, I faced a general strike at home. My children said, we're not going on relocation again. We keep making new friends, going to new schools. We're not going. So I went by myself. And that was something that I paid for very heavily. Even though I came home every 6 weeks for a week, when I eventually returned after 6 months and I said something to my daughter, she said, Mommy, you can't tell me what to do. Only Daddy can tell me what to do. You're not here. Now, if I needed a guilt trip, well, here it was on a silver platter. But I think that there is no doubt that you would not hear that from a child if the father was the one who was going away. So the environment and the way we raise the kids and the values that the society generates are very difficult to combat if you're trying to build the respect for the difference. My mother-in-law was very happy when when we got married because I was a teacher. And she said to my husband, who was doing his specialization in medicine, this will work. Your wife will be home every day at 1 o'clock to take care of the kids. And then I joined Intel. And gone was the 8 to 1, and I was on the treadmill. And she turned to my son and she said, how can you stand this? How can you agree to this? And so we have it in our houses. We hear it. Doesn't matter if you're a woman, if you hear it from your mother-in-law or your daughter, or if you're a man, you hear it from your wife. So we need to remember that this is all something that in order to be able to deal with, we have to acknowledge. Okay, this is a pretty emotionally charged foil. So I see 6 questions. Anna?
Yes, we have a lot of comments saying that it's 100% true, and everyone can relate to these attitudes of I don't know how you do it, and the answer being who says I do? Who says that I can do it, right?
Absolutely.
But yes, and I can also kind of just listening to this, I was thinking back to my first steps in the tech and the startup world. When I was co-founding a company, I had to fly to London to pitch, and I woke up that morning and it was my daughter's birthday, and she got a 39 degrees temperature, and I had a flight, and I was like super torn apart. And my husband said, "We know what it is, so we have the medicine, she'll be fine, you have to go." And I remember crying the whole 2 hours on the plane, thinking, why am I doing this? Is it worth it? Is it worth leaving my kid when she's ill? And I know that pitching, traveling, building your business, and working in tech is very hard if you don't have the support from your family. And I would have never been able to do it if it wasn't for the support of my husband. So I'm super lucky with this, but I think we need more.
No. It's not luck. You chose him.
That is true.
You didn't win him in a lottery packet. Okay? You chose him. And I agree with you. I could never, ever have done it if I did not have the support of my husband. And we did take turns. Sometimes his career came first and sometimes mine.
Yes, totally. I agree. That's how it goes. We have a question from Ilse. Women are more likely to be perfectionists. That is a question. Are women more likely to be perfectionists? And it's sometimes takes too much. Sometimes women take too much, put too much on themselves, or put too much stress on themselves. What would you say?
I think you have to be very careful of generalizations. Okay. OCD, the obsessive compulsive syndrome, exists for men and for women. I think it's less about being perfectionist than being never sure that you can't do even some more, and maybe trying a little bit harder. It's like this business of having 10 criteria before you apply for a job. You can call that perfectionism, but it's not. It's more around the understanding of, that the enemy of good is better. It's the enemy of good. Good is oftentimes good enough. And I don't think I'm not sure it's a gender thing.
Yeah, I've met a lot of male perfectionists, maybe even more than women perfectionists. And I have the saying that perfect is the enemy of done. And sometimes done is much more important.
Exactly. I'll adopt that one. Thank you.
All right.
Okay, next slide. So the last slide around the difference is this summary, and often if you have a visual, you will see that it's easy to remember. Men and women achieve the same results, they just do it differently. And there's no good, and there's no bad, there's no right, and there's no wrong. It's just different. Okay, let's move on. And we will talk about some of the gaps. We have to recognize the fact that it's very difficult to be a woman, and I speak here from my own experience, to be the only woman in a male-dominated environment. And it doesn't matter if it's because the old boys club, where they're all telling, the kind of slightly off-colored jokes, or because the locker room has got disgusting pictures in it. It is a fact that there are things that women are missing to be successful. And I tried to make a list of things that I've heard women complain about, and that they don't know how to negotiate. They don't know how to be effective in their communication. They get asked a question and they give a very long answer when the men want to hear a very short answer. And how you influence is different if you're a man or a woman. How you influence and whom you influence. And the same is true for the leadership, because there are many cases, and we talked a little bit before about the environment, where it is unacceptable for women to lead. And at least from our country, we have a very strong, we have conscription. You have to serve in the army. And so when the men are serving in the army, and they're becoming, they're the ones who become the officers. And then when they leave, they take all of their leadership skills with them. Whereas up until maybe 5-10 years ago, the women in the army in Israel, well, in the very beginning, there was more equality, but then there became less equality. And now we're going back to where women can be pilots and they can be officers and they can be tank commanders, but leadership is something that takes practice. And at least in Israel, you get a lot of practice when you serve 3 years in the military and you're an officer. You get a lot of leadership practice. So we have to make sure. Oh, and then the last one about showcasing accomplishments. It's very difficult for a woman to stand up and say, this is what I've done. So my strong recommendation, and I know, Anna, you're doing a lot of this, is that you provide a lot of training around these specific topics so that women can learn how to negotiate, they can learn how to communicate, and they can certainly learn how to present their accomplishments in a very structured and organized kind of environment. And it's true, it doesn't matter what pipeline you're talking about. It doesn't matter if you're talking about taking the girls from high school into the college and the university, if you're talking about job applications, if you're talking about working in the academia, all of that, you need to be able to strengthen the skills that many women lack. Now I will pause for questions or disagreements or comments.
All right, we have a question here. How has the environment changed in the workplace if we look at it 30 years ago and now?
My honest answer to that is that it's very, very slow progress. If you think about it, do you know when women in Switzerland got the vote?
I don't.
You can Google it, but Switzerland, it was 1978. Okay, think about it. That's 5 minutes ago. So when you try and judge the progress, there are things that you couldn't do 30 years ago. I don't know who asked the question, but there are things that you couldn't do 30 years ago. 30 years ago, I don't think anywhere in the world did we have women pilots. Now we even have women pilots on commercial airlines. So we had no women surgeons, okay? We hardly had women doctors. And when we had women doctors, they were either pediatricians or eye specialists or gynecologists, okay? Now you get women in all the professions. So the last 30 years have seen a lot of progress, but it depends on your community, because we come from a Western community, so do you, so do I, We come from a Western culture, and if you think if you think of what happens to women in societies where they're still covering their whole bodies, they're not allowed to drive, they cannot go out the house without a male accompaniment. For them, the last 30 years have probably made much, much smaller progress. Okay, I want to comment on the chat comment that just came up. Yeah, women have great intuition, and that's fantastic. And when we come to the skills, the business skills that women have, intuition provides the ground for a lot of them. But that doesn't mean to say you can't learn it or that you shouldn't learn it. It's not exclusive. I'm not saying men don't need to learn to negotiate, women do. I'm saying that many women have never been given the opportunity to negotiate for anything, ever. Whereas maybe the boys negotiate on their pocket money from the age of 5. Okay, any more questions?
I think not at this point. We can go ahead.
Okay. So this one will upset the previous chat owner as well. But there are many women who feel alone in the workplace. They don't always understand how they can balance work and life, and we started talking about that. When it comes to promotion, it's interesting that there are many women who say, not now, I cannot take a promotion because I need to be more available at home. We talked about the networks, and I can honestly say that if you are a woman alone in a workplace, the informal networks are there, and you better recognize it because you are different. You are one and they are many. And so what we are talking about, and this is part of what you're doing, is you are creating a society, and you will see it happen. Your mentees will start to form a little group networks where they support one another and where they can discuss all the issues and help find solutions. And this business of informal networks can help resolve a lot of the issues that are mentioned on this page. Okay, go for it now.
Yeah, I want to comment on this, that this is actually one of the reasons that Riga TechGirls was started. So the very, very initial idea, it came actually from a kind of state sister of yours from Israel, who came here and organized the first lunch for startup women here in Latvia. And during this lunch, it was me and Alice Dirika, who is co-founder of Infogram and who is also one of the mentors in our program. And she's also Riga TechGirls co-creator and board member. But yeah, so we thought that we need to create this network because we were feeling lonely as women in the startup world. And if in technology, it's about 20 to 25% of women, then in startup world, especially in the founders, it's less than 5%. So I remember how I was going to tech conferences and from one side being excited that there's never a queue at the ladies' toilet, but from the other side, like there is no one to talk to. And I remember how in Latvia we had the startup founders had a boys club. So the founders were going out every week and they would drink beer and they would discuss how they're moving their startups forward. And I was not invited to these beer drinking events. And my co-founder was even saying, like, I'm sorry, but I cannot invite you. It's a boys' club. We're swearing and we're talking dirty. And I mean, it's not against you, but it would be just so weird. And I remember really like felt like I was left out, because they were kind of thinking of new ideas, of new collaborations, of ways to put their forces together. And we had nothing like that. The women and the girls and the women, yeah, and especially being a mother and a founder, it's something very unique. So having this informal network where you can discuss the challenges and find, as also Zana mentioned from the mentorship program, a shoulder to cry on sometimes, because your family is great, but they don't really get how it is to kind of do what you're doing. So I can see Alice is listening to us on Facebook and sent a heart. So thank you, thank you, Alice. It's a great thing to have this network and support, and this is what we're striving for, to kind of support the women not to feel that lonely when they are starting their career. We have a comment here from Ilse. That this is what the mentor helped her overcome, the way of thinking, a wider view of the life, and yeah, so overcoming fear, and again we're here about the courage, right? So I think it's very much to the point that support network also can give us the courage.
Okay, thank you. I think you're too young to have such an extreme experience of loneliness. By the time you got into the tech world, there should have been more acceptance. What is going on? Go back to the person who asked, what changed in the last 30 years? So it would seem even less than I thought. Okay, this is a fun slide, how women work, okay? So we start very early. You can see the little girl sweeping up there. And then we work hard, and look at the picture here of the woman with the baby and the coffee and the computer doing the multitasking. That is part of all the way we live, and we have to recognize that. Multitasking is a strength of women, but boy, are we called upon to exercise it as we try and balance our work and our home. And look at that little sign there on the side, men at work. And the little boy says, Mom, why that sign? And she says, women work all the time. When men work, they need to put up signs. Now, I don't want to insult all the men that are on the line, but I ask you men, did you ever see a sign that said, women at work? I never did. I have seen many signs that say men at work. And then, of course, the joke at the bottom, we work forever. Because I told you in the very first slide that your first job is your husband, then your children, and then your grandchildren. And that never ends. So expect to work forever. I encourage all of the men online to do the same, because grandfathers is an important job as much as a grandmother. Okay, I don't think we need to knock this slide. Let's go. I think it's very important to recognize, and this is part of the tricks, words create reality. You should not talk about girls when you mean women. You don't hear men talking about boys, they say men. And girls are what goes through to the end of high school, and boys. And after that, you have men and you have women. So the use and the choice of words in language creates a reality that if you choose to do that, you have to understand what you're saying. When you're in a meeting and somebody says, who will take the notes? and one of the industrious women puts their hand up, they are relegating themselves by and large to the position of the secretary. Now, the compulsive confessional that I spoke about before, I really want to tell some stories on this. You're in a meeting, okay? And you suddenly look at your watch and you say, oh my God, I have to take the kid to the dentist. If you're a man, you get up and you say, I have to go, goodbye. If you're a woman, you say, I have to go to the dentist. I couldn't get my son. My mother couldn't take him. I'm sorry. And you go on and on with this explaining, which makes you the compulsive confessional. When you think about how women place themselves, men don't explain. They don't. And for some reason, we feel compulsive. We feel that we have to explain what we're doing and why we're doing it. And it doesn't matter that the whole meeting is sitting there listening to you saying, why are you telling me all this? So one of the things that you have to watch is the language that's used and what it implies and what it leads to. And when a woman says, let's consider, when she's thinking aloud, the perception is, well, she can't make a decision. So if you tie this back to the difference in behaviors, you will see how we are part and parcel of perpetuating some of the problems that exist. Any comments on this? I'm sure that half of you could tell stories.
For sure. I see there's a comment from Mara about our organization's name. So we're called Riga TechGirls, and it maybe should be Riga Tech Women. And it has been a debate for the time as long as we have existed, what this implies and what it means. And what are your thoughts, Maxine? What did you think first time you saw it? And maybe some thoughts on that.
So, Anna, I have too many years of being a mentor. I will not give you the answer. I will just offer you this foil to make you go and rethink what you're trying to achieve. If you're trying to get the girls from high school into the world of technology, and that's the pipeline you're pushing, maybe TechGirls is okay. If you're trying to make it, would there be a Tech Boys? No, it would be a Tech Men. Think about it. Okay, I never thought that thinking aloud is understood as insecurity and lack of opinion. Well, maybe you should think about it. Maybe, just maybe. Okay, so this one is, if you feel you're a pussycat, you need to look in the mirror and see the lion, because the lion is there in any of us. And usually when the male pussycats are looking in the mirror, doesn't matter how small the pussycat is, they're seeing a lion. So we need to get there. And you need to remember that for all great things, including birth, you have to push. You can't be polite and wait in line and wait for someone to offer you or bring you or advance you or increase your salary. You have to push. In general, I totally agree with what's being said. Julia, do you want to explain? I couldn't see the end of the message.
Yeah, my idea was that, well, in general, yes, I 100% agree to everything which has been said right now, and thank you very much for bringing all of that to the surface. But somehow I get this feeling like in IT, at least maybe here in Northern Europe, the situation is a little bit less harsh. I wouldn't say that it's already 100% okay, but it's a little bit less harsh. While, how to say it? Yes, mostly it's still women who are doing testing and analysis and men who are doing development, but not obligatory, at least in the last years. And in the last years, I've seen already cases which at least make my life a little bit more hopeful when people are starting being judged not based on their gender, but on what they are talking. Still, I had the cases when me and the guy are saying the same thought and it's being perceived in totally different ways. So it's just, while I'm totally agree with that, I still hope that maybe at least IT would be the first one which would overcome this, I don't know, this disbalance, this big disbalance.
You know, Yulia, it's really interesting what you say, because in Israel, in Intel, I brought a group of ultra-religious women who are not allowed to mix with men, but I put them in a big conference room and I let them write code, okay? Because you write code, you don't need to be seen and to discuss. And then I moved them on to validation. And here was a group of women who otherwise could not have worked in IT or in anywhere if they would not have had the drive to go and study it and then come and push and say, we want the chance. And if you, as the employer, give us the chance to do it under our conditions, we can do it. And yes, it could only have happened in IT, because in engineering, you have to be on the floor with the machines. So I think in many respects, you are right. IT is a great place to start. Okay, Hagai? All right, now I heard your first lady say that when you have something to say, you should say it out aloud. And this, I've put in this slide what our responsibilities are. We have to decide, you have to decide what you want. You have to be bold. You have to dare to dream, and then you have to tell somebody what you want, and then you have to tell everybody, because people don't have to guess, okay? Not everybody can get in your head and say, oh, she didn't apply for the job, but she really wants it. It doesn't work like that. When you want something, and if your first lady is telling you that, here you go for it. Okay, questions, comments? Okay, so, you know, there is this big discussion on why is it good. Elsa said she took a photo of this and she'll make a poster. Great. By the way, there's a big discussion. Why is it good to have women in the business? And you'll see in a slide or two that Trudeau, who was the Prime Minister of Canada, in 2015, he appointed half of his cabinet ministers as women. And when the newspaper came to interview him, why did you do this? He didn't give them all the bullshit that you usually see of the reasons why you should have women. He said, because it's 2015. And so I had to adjust that foil, and you'll see I put 2021, and we're still talking about it. But there are certain characteristics that women bring to the table that make us valuable partners. And by the way, I think it all rolls up into what somebody said to me before about intuition. Passion, flexibility, the ability to collaborate, okay? And the ability to really sustain things over a long period of time are crucial capabilities that women bring to the table and make the business more compassionate, more friendly, more effective. And by the way, one of the reasons that women have to get the job done is because they have to go home to their second job. And so you can't mess around having coffee at 5 o'clock. You have to go home at 5 o'clock because there's somebody waiting for you. So if you think of these capabilities and think of them in the context of where your intuition takes you in terms of your passion, your flexibility, your ability to collaborate, etc., you will see that it's not a reason why you should have women in the business place. You should have women in the business place because we're 50% of the population. It is what we bring to the table that will be missing if not. Okay, is there a chat question there?
No, not at the moment.
Okay. Okay, so I've been teaching for more than 35 years, and this is a summary of some of the stuff that I've learned, and therefore I teach. Affirmative action is bad. You don't want to have affirmative action. Affirmative action doesn't mean the best person gets the job. It means it's a quota. Women have to aim high. Next. Don't accept no as an answer. When a man hears no, he understands that it really means not now, or do it differently. Women take no as no and they go away all upset. You have not arrived where you are by grace or luck, okay? You have earned your current position by right and by hard work. You don't wish for promotion. You know you deserve it. So why equality? And that's where the Trudeau, I had to adapt it from 2015, but women, it's 2021 and women now take responsibility. Okay, next. 2 more foils. And remember, be kind to yourself, but also be demanding. Be excellent and demand excellence from others. And another thing your first lady said, you need to pay forward because otherwise women are generous, okay? And in our generosity, we pay forward. We give it to others. We hand on what we've been given. And that's why I'm here today. That's why you're all here today. And that's part of what we are and who we are. Okay, and the last one, be a mentor and recruit mentors throughout your life. You cannot do without one. You always need one. Okay, and last, I give you a gift. Each one of you. It doesn't matter if you're a man or a woman. You need to develop your own teachable point of view. And your teachable point of view is what you can say in the elevator from the 8th floor to the 1st floor and you're done. Find yourself a coach. Take responsibility. And that's where it comes that you have to say it out aloud. Remember, the leader will stand under the arch when the scaffolding is removed. And the number one practical competency for leaders is empathy. And that's a quote from Peter Drucker, who is one of the greatest coaches in terms of leadership that I have ever met or worked with. That's it.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you, Maxine. I have actually a question to kind of about the past couple of slides. So being a mentor and recruiting mentors, do you have advice for us on how to find your mentor? So one way is to join a mentorship program, as we have. But if you want someone to be your mentor, you see someone who inspires you, whom you want to be, how to go about reaching out to this person? Do you have some tips?
Just go and ask. You know, usually people are so shocked that somebody would come up and ask them that they'll say yes. So just go and ask. And if it's someone that you need long distance mentoring, find out how to send a WhatsApp. Find out how to send a LinkedIn. Something that I actually prefer the frontal contact because you can't avoid it. Okay, the WhatsApp you can ignore, but seriously, just ask. Yeah, that's what Danila is saying. Am I saying the name correctly?
Dagny, yeah?
Dagny.
Yeah.
Yeah, just go and ask. You know, I had, as I said before, I had probably 3 major mentors in my life, all of whom were men. And sometimes I didn't even make the official, you know, I say, I need to talk to you. Can I talk to you for 10 minutes? Okay. And then you come back 2 weeks later and say, that was great advice. I need to talk to you some more. I've never defined the person as my mentor, but he became my mentor. And by the way, one of the most incredible mentors that I ever had, I think if you asked him today, if, you know, does he mentor people? He would say, no, I don't do that. And he was my mentor. He's been my mentor for 10 years.
I guess it's also about this perception and bravery to ask for the mentors, to ask for help.
So we're back to your courage?
Yes, we are.
Okay. There's something